On behalf of the President and members of the Yakult India Microbiota and Probiotic Science Foundation, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to this symposium, which is the second in the series conducted by the Probiotic Foundation. I also bring a message from Dr. Ganguly, a welcome message. Unfortunately, he's not here, he's indisposed, but I'm sure along with me and our foundation, he extends a very warm welcome to you. In the next 24 hours, we have put together a program which I hope you'll find very interesting. We have got speakers from overseas and national experts who will be deliberating on a whole series of aspects of microbiota and probiotics. So I will not attempt to say anything which will just be redundant, but what I'd like to use this few minutes of the welcome speech is to give you a brief history of probiotics and microbiota, something which you probably may not have heard, but it's interesting. I'm very fond of the history of medicine, and if you go back to the work of probiotics, we generally invoke the name of Elie Metchnikov. But I'm not sure how many of you know that Metchnikov, a Russian embryologist, started as a person poking thorns into starfish larvae and watching in fascination the amoeboid cellular entities that came and engulfed these thorns. And based on these observations, he called them the phagocytes, and that was the birth of a new science known as cellular immunology. So that's where he started, and he also had this impression that the colon was a cesspool inhabited by bacteria which liberated toxins which disseminated throughout the body and settled in every place. And he targeted phagocytes, or he thought phagocytes were the ones which destroyed these toxic elements, and in the process there was collateral damage to humans. That's how it started. And he was so impressed by this, he called it what his was orthobiosis. And he also propagated at one time colectomies, so that you get rid of the vestigial organ. And there were some physicians in England who did follow and endorse his theory of colectomies to get rid of the bacteria residing in the colon. But then, after he garnered his Nobel Prize in 1908, he tempered his philosophy, and instead of colectomies which he proposed, he went on to suggest the introduction of exogenous friendly bacteria to replace those ones that are the bad bacteria. And in fact, that's the concept which has started, and he believed that this would prolong life. And this was started by him using a strain called Bacillus bulgaricus. But over a period of time, that is from 1910 to about 1930, physicians or scientists at that time recognized that Bacillus bulgarius did not survive the transition to the colon because of the acid barrier. And so then, especially from the Yale University, a microbiologist known as Leo Radgers proposed Lactobacillus acidophilus. And that's how the lactobacillus therapy came in. And in 1930s, Minoru Shirota in Japan proposed his strain, Lactobacillus casei, strain Shirota, which incidentally is the same drink that you drink today of Yakult. So that's the history behind this. The 1940s saw an abrupt end to the lactobacillus therapy era with the discovery of sulfa drugs and antibiotics. In fact, the entire thing that time it was not known as probiotics, of friendly bacteria was put into the scientific periphery, and it was antibiotics. And the perceptions at that time was also important, because the perception that time was war on bugs and antibiotics was the solution. But a decade later, in the 1940s, there was this observation that farm animals, when fed subtherapeutic levels of antibiotics, tended to grow fat, and that's how it was used with farm animals. And therefore, there was a perception of friendly bacteria again. But then, towards the 1950s, it was firmly entrenched in the mind of physicians, scientists all over about antibiotic resistance, the threat about antibiotic resistance, super infections, and a whole lot, and a specter of spread of antibiotic resistance. So that entire thing went back, and the friendly bacteria story again came in. And it was between 1950 to 1970s, in various contexts, the term probiotics was coined. 1980s, the term was stabilized. But even in the early 1990s, the use of probiotics in medical practice was scarce. I mean, hardly. In fact, it was deemed as unorthodox medicine. But in the mid-1990s was the real takeoff of probiotics as a health tool, beneficial for health. And both theory and therapy do not co-evolve in vacuum. This was also because of methodological and technological developments in science, commerce, and the very concept of healthcare. And in 2001, the term microbiome was coined by Joshua Lederberg, and that led on to probiotics, the understanding of probiotics in a better scientific sense, and also into terms like holobiont, metagenome, and a whole lot of other words which has come and which you see rapidly proliferating in your literature. So that's the background. Today, we know that probiotics is perhaps the leading edge in medical research. And also it is the leading edge in a multi-billion-dollar industry. So industry and science are actually working in tandem to push the concept of pure probiotics. There is still a lot to be done. But friends, what I would like to tell you is that you are part of making a history when you're working on probiotics. And this is something which you should recognize. It's entire new, as a microbiologist, for me, perhaps in my 35 years, this is about the most exciting times. Because you see bacteria which you can't culture, and that is something ingrained into a microbiologist's mind is culture. So, friends, I would like to end this welcome address just by telling you that we are in absolutely the frontiers of science, and take your opportunity. Thank you, and welcome again.